He had always thought the most dangerous part of his job was slipping on a wet floor or getting a mop handle in the face, but tonight proved otherwise. The mansion was enormous, impossibly bright, and filled with floating furniture that seemed to follow its own logic, ignoring every law of physics he knew. His mop squeaked across the polished floor, reverberating in a hallway that smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet, like alien nectar. He adjusted his human grip on the cleaning brush and tried not to trip over a levitating plant that glided lazily past him, as though it were the sentient pet of some invisible alien butler. He muttered under his breath about how this gig had started as a favor to a friend and now had him navigating zero-gravity staircases while avoiding holographic portraits that winked at him. The clink of heels, or rather, the absence of proper heels, because they hovered slightly above the ground, made him freeze. He turned to see her, and everything about her screamed wealth, power, and trouble. She glided toward him with a grace that defied not only gravity but also common sense. Her eyes, a luminous shade of violet that almost hurt to look at, studied him as if he were a complicated puzzle she already knew the answer to. Before he could react, she smiled, a mischievous, dangerous kind of smile that humans weren't really equipped to interpret, and said his name in a way that made his knees want to wobble. Only, of course, she had it all wrong. "I've been waiting for you," she said, brushing past him without a second glance at the mop in his hand or the trail of water he'd just left. "You're exactly on time." He blinked, trying to form words, but nothing came out except a nervous, I think you've got the wrong." "No," she interrupted, tilting her head, letting a lock of metallic blue hair drift around her face. "You are the pleasure consultant. The one my father hired. Tonight is very important, and I have high expectations." His stomach twisted into a knot the size of a small moon. Pleasure consultant? That was not part of the job description. Janitor, yes. Mop-wielding floor cleaner, yes. Expert in intergalactic intimacy? Definitely not. Yet here he was, staring at a beautiful, dangerous alien heiress who was clearly expecting more than polite conversation and dust-free countertops. I'm just a janitor," he stammered, hoping the words would somehow convince her. "I clean floors. Not that kind of, He trailed off, realizing words had failed him utterly. "Perfect," she said, clapping her hands together like this were exactly what she had been planning. "I love a man who is modest. It's very attractive." He nearly dropped the mop. Not only had she ignored his protests, she had somehow interpreted them as flirtation. One might call it terrifying. He called it a full-blown panic attack in slow motion. Still, he had a job to do, so he straightened his back and tried to back away toward the exit. Only, the exit had vanished. Or, more accurately, it had floated 3 feet up the wall and rotated out of reach. Clearly, the mansion did not care for human conventions. "Come with me," she commanded, stepping over the floating furniture like it wasn't even there. "I have prepared a series of exercises that will help you relax and enjoy tonight." Exercises. Right. He swallowed hard, wondering how cleaning floors had somehow escalated to intergalactic seduction gymnastics. He followed cautiously, as she led him into a room that looked like it had been designed by someone with no understanding of human architecture but a lot of money. The floor was polished to a mirror finish, the walls shimmered with holographic patterns, and several zero-gravity platforms floated in seemingly random positions. He noticed a few devices he didn't recognize, some that hummed, others that blinked, and one that clearly looked like it could electrocute him if he moved too quickly. "First exercise," she said, dropping onto one of the floating platforms, "is to demonstrate your human relaxation techniques. I want to see the finesse that your species is apparently famous for." Finesse. That's when he realized he had none. Humans were simple creatures. He was simple. But the alien woman staring at him as if he held the secrets of the universe clearly thought otherwise. He tried a deep breath, which only resulted in knocking over a small hovering vase that ricocheted across the room before floating gently to the ceiling. She clapped in delight. "Yes! Very organic!" she exclaimed. I can see why my father trusts me to select such a nuanced consultant. He blinked, incredulous. I'm not the... Relax, she said, waving him off and pulling out a device that looked like a hairbrush but was covered in blinking lights and what he could only assume were electrodes. This will help you channel your human essence. Just hold it here. He did as instructed, holding the thing awkwardly against his chest. It buzzed violently, a soft green light spreading across the walls. A holographic display popped up, showing various poses he had never learned, never even seen, with instructions like increase pheromone output by 37%, and smile with gravitational confidence. I don't know how to do this, he muttered, flailing slightly as he tried to follow the hologram. His foot slipped on a floating banana peel, clearly left over from some alien prank, and he ended up crouched on the floor, arms tangled in the gadget, while a small laser pet zipped past, narrowly missing his head. Instead of scolding him, she clapped her hands. Ah! I see you understand the principle of dynamic human tension. Impressive! Her excitement was almost palpable, radiating through the room like an alien aura that made him feel both dizzy and alarmingly warm. He wanted to leave. He wanted to explain. He wanted to mop every floor he had ever cleaned. Yet here he was, stuck in zero-gravity chaos, holding an alien device that pulsed with an intensity he was sure was not meant for human physiology, while she watched him like a scientist observing a fascinating specimen. And somewhere in the back of his mind, between panic and disbelief, a tiny voice whispered, maybe he didn't mind being watched. Maybe there was a thrill in being this completely out of his depth, chased by floating banana peels, surrounded by bizarre technology, and utterly adored by a violet-eyed alien heiress. Before he could fully consider the implications, she tapped the device against his chest again, smiled dangerously, and said, "Now, for the next exercise." He followed her into the next room, which seemed to defy every law of human architecture. Gravity was optional here, apparently, as furniture floated lazily in midair, shimmering in metallic hues that made him feel dizzy just looking at them. He tried to step carefully on the polished floor, but a stray orb of light zipped past him, bouncing off a wall and narrowly missing his head. He ducked instinctively, nearly tripping over a floating rug that swirled like liquid under his feet. This was not cleaning floors. This was surviving an alien obstacle course while maintaining some shred of dignity. She dropped onto a levitating platform, the motion so effortless it made him realize he would never understand alien physiology. She gestured dramatically toward a row of bizarre devices lined up like exotic instruments. "Tonight we will explore the subtleties of human pleasure," she said, her voice melodic but sharp. "And you, my chosen consultant, will guide me." He froze. "Guide you? I..." "Shh," she interrupted, waving a hand like his protests were invisible. "We don't have time for modesty. You're perfect for this. Humans are delightfully unpredictable." He glanced down at his own hands, the mop now clutched like a lifeline, and realized that unpredictability might be the only thing keeping him sane. A small, metallic device rolled toward him on 4 tiny legs and beeped cheerfully. He stepped back instinctively and tripped over another floating banana peel, his arms flailing wildly. Somehow, in a combination of bad luck and human instinct, he grabbed one of the alien gadgets, a strange glowing wand that pulsed softly, and accidentally activated it. Instantly, a holographic overlay filled the room with images of him performing poses that seemed vaguely intimate and highly inappropriate. "Oh yes! Exactly!" she cried, clapping. "You understand immediately. Fascinating!" He sputtered. I don't, this isn't. I don't know what I'm doing." Her laughter echoed around the room, soft and musical, and for a moment he forgot to panic. Almost. Her violet eyes sparkled with mischief, and the way she leaned slightly forward, watching him struggle, made his pulse race in ways unrelated to fear. He had cleaned mansions before, sure, but he had never felt more alive, or terrified, in his entire life. A small laser pet zipped past, its glowing eyes locking onto him, and he swatted at it, only to knock another gadget off the floating table. It tumbled into the air, activated, and released a puff of shimmering mist that hovered and formed shapes, hearts, stars, and something he hoped was a decorative pattern but looked suspiciously like a suggestive silhouette. She giggled, clapping again. "You're full of surprises," she said. "I do love a man who can handle chaos. And humans are so charmingly chaotic." He tried to explain himself, attempted some dignified demonstration of human composure, but each movement seemed to trigger another disaster. His foot caught on a levitating stool, sending him spinning into a holographic mirror that reflected his horrified expression a dozen times. He stumbled, and the glowing wand slipped from his fingers, landing on the floor and beeping as though mocking him. "Excellent," she said, eyes sparkling. "I can see your creative instinct. You improvise. That is what I admire." Improvisation had become his only survival skill. He grabbed a floating pillow to stabilize himself, only to have it slip through his hands and float past her with perfect comedic timing. She reached out and caught it midair, clearly delighted, and tossed it back. He ducked instinctively, and the pillow bounced off his shoulder and activated yet another gadget, a device that emitted soft, melodic tones and lights that made the room feel like a sensual alien nightclub. "You're a natural," she said, stepping closer, her hand brushing against his arm in a deliberate, teasing manner. "I've never met a human with such raw potential." He froze, heart hammering. That touch was enough to make him aware of how out of place he was, how completely he did not belong in this world of floating furniture, glowing devices, and laser-eyed pets. And yet there was something thrilling about it, too. Something that made him want to rise to the challenge rather than flee. Just as he was beginning to regain some semblance of control, a new complication arose. The real pleasure consultant, a suave alien with too many limbs and an air of dangerous expertise, appeared in the doorway. His violet-skinned, perfectly coiffed presence radiated competence, immediately highlighting the janitor's human shortcomings. The daughter waved cheerfully. "Ah, there you are! I was just getting acquainted with our consultant. He seems promising." The janitor's stomach sank. He considered fleeing, but the doorway seemed impossibly far, thanks to zero-gravity effects. Instead, he straightened his back, took a deep breath, and decided to play along. Improvisation had worked so far, maybe it could work a little longer. He picked up the glowing wand, trying to look like he knew what he was doing, and accidentally activated another feature. Streams of soft light danced around the room, forming geometric shapes that somehow resembled both a yoga instruction and an exotic dance routine. She clapped her hands, delighted. "Incredible! I didn't think humans could be so expressive." He swallowed. "Yes, well, expression. I mean, humans are flexible," he muttered. The consultant raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but the daughter ignored him, her attention entirely on the janitor. She floated closer, brushing against his side in a teasingly intimate way, and whispered, "You're surprisingly good at this. I might need you to teach me more." And just like that, the chaos became a strangely thrilling game. Floating banana peels, humming gadgets, and laser-eyed pets faded slightly into the background as he realized something. He wasn't just surviving. He was charming her. She was laughing at him, yes, but also with him. And somewhere deep in the whirlwind of absurdity, zero-gravity furniture, and ridiculous alien technology, a spark ignited, awkward, combustible, and entirely human. The night was only beginning, and already he knew he would need all his wit, agility, and maybe even his dignity if he was going to make it through without either being fired or accidentally starting an intergalactic incident. But one thing was certain. Surviving this night might just involve teaching an alien billionaire's daughter a few lessons about humans, and discovering a few surprising things about himself in the process. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was about to happen. The real consultant had arrived, sleek and self-assured, with multiple limbs moving in perfect harmony, clearly trained to handle every imaginable situation with alien precision. The janitor, by contrast, was flailing, a mop in one hand and a blinking gadget in the other, sweat forming along his human brow. Somehow, he needed to convince everyone, including the daughter, that he was the expert. Improvisation had brought him this far. Perhaps it could carry him all the way. Relax, the daughter said, floating effortlessly beside him, her eyes glittering with mischief. Show me what only a human can teach. He swallowed hard. What only a human could teach, he thought? Probably how to survive a series of increasingly absurd accidents without completely dying. He raised the glowing wand, trying to look confident, and pressed a random button. Immediately, streams of holographic lights erupted around the room, forming intricate patterns that resembled both an alien ritual and a dance tutorial. The daughter gasped in delight, clapping her hands. Impressive! Such originality! She exclaimed. I didn't think humans could be so expressive. Lead the way. He had no idea what he was leading, but that didn't stop him. He stumbled onto a floating platform, grabbed a nearby pillow for balance, and found himself performing a completely improvised series of gestures that somehow matched the holographic instructions. The daughter mirrored him enthusiastically, laughing every time he made a mistake, turning every blunder into an endearing flourish. The real consultant raised an eyebrow. Interesting technique, he said dryly, arms folded, clearly unimpressed. The janitor froze for a moment, considering whether to run for the door or apologize profusely. Neither option seemed viable. Instead, he smiled awkwardly, nodded, and decided to continue as though this was part of the plan. Another button on the wand activated, and suddenly the floor became a shallow pool of glittering liquid, zero-gravity droplets floating around him like tiny stars. He slipped instantly, crashing into the holographic projection and knocking it askew. Oh! The daughter squealed. Human spontaneity! Exactly what I wanted! He groaned internally. Spontaneity was not part of his skill set, survival was. Yet somehow, in the daughter's eyes, it was brilliant. He tried to regain balance, only to accidentally hit a third gadget, a hovering sphere that emitted soft pulses of light and a low hum. The pulses made the room feel warmer, softer, and somehow more intimate. He noticed his pulse quicken, a human reaction he was suddenly very aware of. You handle chaos very well, she murmured, floating closer. Her hand brushed his shoulder ever so lightly, and the touch sent an electric thrill through his body, one he was embarrassingly aware of. The real consultant, clearly growing impatient, extended multiple limbs toward the devices to take control, only for the daughter to place a hand on his arm, stopping him. No, she said firmly. This one is unique. We need his perspective. Unique. That was a polite way of saying completely clueless. He tried to nod, accidentally pressing another button, and a holographic screen popped up, displaying a step-by-step guide for what she called human sensual finesse. The illustrations were explicit, and his face flushed a deep shade of crimson as he realized every mistake he made so far had been unintentionally demonstrating some form of intimacy. See, she exclaimed, eyes sparkling. You are perfect. Exactly what I needed. He stumbled backward, slipping on a floating banana peel that seemed determined to sabotage him at every turn. He crashed into a laser-eyed pet, which screeched indignantly and zipped across the room, narrowly missing the real consultant. Holographic shapes flickered, creating patterns that alternated between alien symbols and what he swore looked like suggestive human gestures. Every misstep became comedy, every stumble became charm, and somehow, he was surviving it all. The daughter floated over, laughing softly. You are surprisingly adept. Humans are far more resilient than I anticipated. I may need you to continue this training for some time. Resilient. That was a nice word for completely flailing but still alive. He nodded, swallowing hard, trying to maintain a facade of calm. The real consultant sighed, clearly realizing he had no control over the situation. The janitor, human as he was, had somehow turned incompetence into performance art, and the daughter was utterly enchanted. He took a tentative step closer to her, trying to mirror one of the holographic poses, only to crash again into the floating furniture. She giggled and caught him mid-fall, holding him close for just a second too long. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, fear, embarrassment, and something dangerously like excitement all tangled together. "Relax," she whispered, brushing a hand along his arm. "I trust you." Trust. That word made him freeze, caught in a mixture of panic and thrill. He had never imagined a moment like this in his quiet, janitorial life, floating in a room that defied physics, surrounded by blinking alien gadgets and laser-eyed pets, impersonating an expert he had never met, and yet somehow being genuinely appreciated by a being as extraordinary as her. A new gadget activated without warning, sending streams of light that wrapped around them, shimmering like a curtain of liquid stars. He tried to step out of it, only for another banana peel to send him sliding back into her. She laughed, and this time, instead of embarrassment, he felt a tiny spark of confidence. Perhaps humans could thrive in chaos. Perhaps being clumsy and awkward was exactly what she found irresistible. By the time the consultant retreated, realizing he was powerless against human unpredictability, the janitor had survived every gadget, every floating object, every slapstick mishap, and somehow, in the process, had charmed the alien billionaire's daughter. She smiled at him, violet eyes gleaming with playful mischief and something warmer, something intimate. The chaos had bonded them in a strange, unpredictable way that no instruction manual or expert consultant could have achieved. And as he caught his breath, bruised, exhausted, and exhilarated, he realized something terrifying and wonderful. Surviving this night might not be about avoiding embarrassment anymore. It might be about seeing just how far he could go, and just how much she wanted him to go there with her. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and the real consultant finally entered the room in full confidence, limbs perfectly coordinated, demeanor radiating expertise. The janitor froze, mop and blinking gadget in hand, knowing he had only moments before the entire illusion collapsed. The daughter, however, floated gracefully to the center of the room, violet eyes gleaming with mischief, and smiled. "Ah, there you are," she said, voice teasing. "I was just observing my consultant in action. Fascinating, isn't it?" The consultant glanced around, blinking at the chaotic scene, floating furniture, zero-gravity banana peels scattered across the floor, holographic images flickering between alien diagrams and accidentally suggestive human gestures. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "I see," he said cautiously. "He has handled things differently than expected." The janitor swallowed hard, realizing his improvisation had somehow carried him this far. He straightened his back and, with a shaky but determined smile, tried to appear confident. Every mishap, the sliding on banana peels, the accidental activation of holographic gadgets, the laser-eyed pets darting between them, had been spun into a performance of human ingenuity. Somehow, the daughter had adored every moment. "Yes," she said softly, floating closer to him. "He is unique. I was unsure at first, but humans are more resilient and creative than I imagined." She reached out, lightly brushing a hand against his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, and he realized his pulse had been racing the entire night, not from fear, but from excitement, tension, and something dangerously like desire. The consultant, realizing he had been completely outmaneuvered, stepped back with a sigh, muttering something about unpredictability and unconventional technique. The daughter ignored him, turning her attention entirely to the janitor. "Tonight was enlightening," she said. "I think you might have exceeded my expectations. I certainly didn't expect to learn so much from a human." The janitor blinked, unsure how to respond. I just tried to help," he said, voice uncertain. In truth, he had no idea how he had survived the night, how he had managed to keep all the gadgets from exploding, or how he had somehow charmed the daughter while impersonating the real consultant. She floated closer, her hand grazing his chest, teasing but gentle, a deliberate test of boundaries and comfort. "Help? Oh, you did more than that," she whispered. "You navigated caves, survived impossible obstacles, and entertained me endlessly. I find that irresistible." His heart pounded in his chest. The absurdity of the night, the gadgets, the zero-gravity furniture, the holographic projections, the flying pets, faded into background noise as he realized she meant it. She had been charmed by him, not the consultant, not the devices, not the orchestrated scenarios. Just him, human, messy, adaptive, and utterly unpredictable. He took a tentative step forward, then another, and she met him halfway, floating just above the floor so that she matched his awkward stride. Their fingers brushed accidentally, or perhaps not so accidentally, and he felt an undeniable warmth, a spark that human physiology alone couldn't explain. For a moment, the chaos of the room, the blinking gadgets, the hovering objects, even the consultant's disapproval, melted away. It was just them, one human, one alien, and an unexpected connection forged in absurdity. "Do you want to continue?" she asked, voice playful, lips curving in a mischievous smile. Her words were innocent on the surface but carried the promise of intrigue and adventure. He nodded, a mix of relief, anticipation, and exhilaration flooding him. "Yes," he said, his voice firmer now, surprisingly confident despite the whirlwind of the evening. "I think I do." The consultant raised both sets of arms in surrender, muttering something about unpredictability again, and slipped out of the room, leaving them alone. The daughter grinned, floating around him in slow circles, as if savoring the human's every reaction. She activated another gadget, a soft, glowing sphere that wrapped the room in gentle light, and the janitor couldn't help but laugh. The absurdity was overwhelming, but it was also intoxicating. "Humans are truly remarkable," she said, settling closer to him. "I never imagined someone could survive all of this, and still intrigue me." He chuckled nervously, brushing a hand through his hair. "I think I just got lucky," he admitted, though he knew that human luck was really just ingenuity, courage, and a stubborn refusal to quit. She leaned closer, her violet eyes locking with his, and the room seemed to pulse around them, floating lights, holographic hearts, and the gentle hum of alien machinery creating a private world of chaos, intimacy, and unexpected romance. "Luck or not," she whispered, "I like it. I like you. And I think tonight is only the beginning." He swallowed, hard hammering, and realized she meant it. The night of slipping on zero-gravity banana peels, dodging laser-eyed pets, and improvising with alien devices had not only survived, it had thrived. He had charmed the daughter, survived the chaos, and discovered something thrilling. Humans were capable of more than cleaning floors and mopping up after aliens. They could survive, improvise, and even win the heart of a billionaire's daughter in an entirely alien world. "Then let's see where this goes," he said, daring to smile, allowing a hint of confidence to show. She grinned, brushing past him to activate yet another harmless gadget that released shimmering lights across the room. She floated close, hand grazing his shoulder once more, and whispered, "Humans are unexpectedly delightful. I think I could get used to this." As he laughed, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and exhilaration washing over him, he realized he had survived the impossible, an alien heiress, a room full of chaotic gadgets, zero-gravity mishaps, and still, somehow, he had earned her attention, her admiration, and her fascination. And somehow, just somehow, he had started something far more dangerous, and far more exciting, than any cleaning job had ever promised, an interstellar romance that was entirely, gloriously human.